Jonathan, a lonely and high-powered CEO, feels the crushing weight of isolation despite his success. One restless night, he impulsively boards the wrong train, trading his world of boardrooms for an unexpected journey to a small, welcoming town. As the train winds past quiet fields and humble villages, Jonathan begins to rediscover the simple joys of life. A warm smile at a local bakery, community gatherings filled with laughter, and the deep, genuine connection he finds with a kind-hearted local woman. In this gentle, life-changing detour, the CEO learns that true success isn't measured in wealth or power, but in embracing love, vulnerability, and the comforting promise of new beginnings. Jonathan sat alone in his spacious penthouse overlooking the glittering city. The view was breathtaking. Towering skyscrapers intermingled with neon lights, a symphony of success and modern ambition. But despite the grand vista, his heart felt heavy. Every night, he returned home to silence. His luxurious apartment, filled with state-of-the-art gadgets and designer furnishings, had become nothing more than a gilded cage. For years, the endless cycle of boardroom decisions and high-stakes negotiations had defined his life. Yet behind every victory lay a lingering sadness, a deep, silent loneliness. The accolades and financial achievements brought little comfort when evenings settled in, and there was no one by his side to share the moment. Each reflection in the darkened window reminded him that he was more alone than he ever thought possible. One cold winter evening, after another grueling day of endless meetings and mounting pressure, Jonathan found himself pacing the room. He opened the window to let in the sharp, crisp night air. It was in that moment, listening to the distant hum of the city, that a wild idea stirred in his mind. What if he could escape, even just for a while? What if he left behind the relentless routines for a taste of something more genuine, something simpler? The notion grew louder with every passing minute. With a sudden sense of urgency, he retrieved his coat and stepped outside. The city that once gave him comfort now felt suffocating, a maze of concrete and glass that stole away his inner joy. The chill air was a welcome contrast to the stagnant isolation inside his home. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to think freely instead of following the unyielding demands of his corporate life. Jonathan walked briskly toward the city's central train station. The evening was quiet except for the occasional murmur of city dwellers ending their day. He barely noticed the bright billboards or the endless stream of passing cars. All that mattered was the possibility of a new beginning, a chance to break free from the routine he no longer wished to live. At the station, as he bought his ticket, he hesitated. A train ticket with a destination label he could hardly understand, a string of letters and names he was unfamiliar with. The ticket in his hand wasn't for a major hub. It belonged instead to a commuter line, one that he had never considered before. But in that moment, logic and experience took a back seat to instinct. Without a second thought, he boarded the train that would unknowingly alter the course of his life. Inside the train, the atmosphere was entirely different from the sterile modernity of his world. The compartment was old-fashioned and cozy, with well-worn seats and soft, ambient lighting that gave the interior a gentle glow. The soft murmur of conversation and the rhythmic clatter of the train along the tracks created a soothing background, a sound that seemed to whisper of simpler times. Jonathan took a seat by the window, his mind swirling with memories of years long past, of times when he had not yet been burdened by endless responsibility. As the train began to move, Jonathan's thoughts drifted. He recalled the laughter of childhood days spent in the countryside, the simplicity of friends gathering around a modest table, sharing meals and stories. Those memories, once overshadowed by his climb to success, now shone brightly like a beacon of possibility in the quiet of his heart. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, allowing the steady rocking of the carriage to lull him into a reflective state. The outside scenery transformed slowly from the sleek, modern outlines of a city to the rolling landscapes of countryside. The train passed through neighborhoods with colorful houses and winding streets. There was an unexpected charm in the way the world turned out beyond his familiar territory. Each mile the train journeyed reminded him that sometimes life needed a pause, a chance to stop and look again at what really mattered. The gentle hum of the train and the soft cadence of the conversations filled him with a hopeful sensation. He began to wonder if perhaps this unplanned detour was more than a momentary escape. Instead, it was a quiet invitation to reawaken parts of him that had been neglected for far too long. Outside the window, the landscape shifted from dense urban sprawl to open fields touched by the soft glow of lamplight. Far removed from the rigid structures of the city, a natural rhythm seemed to permeate the night. He saw familiar signs of change, the chill of winter giving way to the promise of early spring, the bare branches of trees replaced by new leaves starting to bud. In this gentle transformation, Jonathan sensed that he too was ready for renewal. As the minutes turned into hours, there was little to distract him from the rising hope within. He had no real destination in mind, no schedule to follow, only the adventure of leaving behind his old self. The journey was, in many ways, an act of rebellion against the rigid expectations that had defined him for so long. It was a quest for meaning in a world that had all but forgotten the simple pleasures of connection and understanding. In the soft murmur of the train, he almost heard the promise of the unknown, a promise wrapped in the ambiguity of the night and the quiet strength that comes from a second chance. Jonathan realized that this seemingly random decision was an invitation for his soul to rediscover life beyond the confines of corporate ambition. Each passing mile was a small step away from a life that, despite its outward success, had left him achingly empty. The train's interior grew quieter still as more passengers settled into their personal worlds. Some napped softly, while others scribbled in small journals or stared pensively out the window. For Jonathan, it was a moment of deep solitude, a chance to face his feelings, his regrets, and his unspoken dreams without judgment. In the soft flicker of the overhead lights, he recognized that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a necessary threshold to change. By the time Jonathan realized how far he had traveled, he no longer felt rushed to return to his old life. The decision to board that train, driven by a longing for something real, now burned within him with a quiet intensity. What lay ahead was uncertain. He had neither a plan nor a precise destination. Yet in that uncertainty, there was an undeniable beauty, a freedom that came with a willingness to take a leap into the unknown. As the train moved steadily onward, Jonathan made a silent vow to himself. He would welcome whatever this journey had to offer, be it bittersweet memories, unexpected challenges, or even the possibility of love that had long eluded him. Every moment on that train was a promise of potential, a single step towards discovering a life filled not with endless ambition, but with honest moments of connection and joy. And so, in the quiet solitude of a train journey far removed from the high towers of corporate power, Jonathan's story of departure began, an unfolding adventure that would soon lead him to a small town, where the magic of human connection awaited him, ready to mend a lonely heart and rewrite what true success could mean. As the train chugged steadily along the tracks, Jonathan settled deeper into his seat, feeling the quiet hum of life around him. The gentle rhythm of the carriage became the score to his silent introspection. Outside, the world transformed from the bustling city he once knew to a landscape that spoke of hidden stories and long-forgotten simplicity. In the soft, ambient light of the train compartment, Jonathan found himself surrounded by a collection of ordinary travelers, each with their own small tale. There was an elderly man quietly reading a worn-out book, his lined face full of gentle wisdom. A young mother cradled her baby, murmuring soft lullabies, her eyes sparkling with hope and love. And a group of teenagers, laughter bubbling between them, reminded him of distant days when life felt both unpredictable and free. The mixture of faces and stories on the train created an atmosphere of humble familiarity that Jonathan had long missed. He realized that behind every quiet glance and every exchanged smile was a life much like his, a life filled with moments of both joy and sorrow. Each person on the train seemed to be on their own journey, much like he was, seeking meaning in the spaces between departure and destination. As the train slipped further away from the neon intensity of the city, Jonathan let his mind wander. He thought about the countless emails, calls, and board meetings that had once consumed his every waking hour. He recalled the blinding glare of office lights and the impersonal click of keyboards, all of which had gradually silenced the melody of his inner voice. Now, in the quiet solitude of the train, his thoughts began to bloom like spring flowers breaking through a long winter's frost. The landscape outside the window unfolded like a watercolor painting. Vast fields stretched out under a twilight sky, dotted with clusters of trees and humble houses. A gentle fog occasionally rolled in, softening the lines of distant hills and lending an air of mystery to the passing scenery. Jonathan felt a growing appreciation for this unplanned detour, as if the journey itself was whispering secrets about life's hidden treasures. During a brief stop at a small station, a friendly conductor came by to check tickets. With a smile that reached his eyes, the conductor chatted with a few passengers about the beauty of the countryside and the charm of the towns along the way. This simple exchange, filled with warmth and genuine care, reminded Jonathan that sometimes the best parts of life are the ones you found when you slowed down enough to notice. Encouraged by these small interactions, Jonathan began to scribble down thoughts in a well-worn notebook he always carried. He wrote about the bittersweet beauty of memories that now felt more alive than they ever had in the confines of his high-rise office. He penned reflections on long-forgotten dreams and future hopes, a life where connection mattered more than status, and where moments of genuine emotion outshined any boardroom victory. As the hours passed, the train journey took on a meditative quality. The gentle clatter of the tracks blended with the low murmur of conversations in nearby seats. Jonathan listened to snippets of dialogue, a tender farewell between a couple, an excited exchange about a family reunion, the soft chuckle of someone reminiscing about childhood adventures. Every sound became a reminder that life was woven together by countless shared experiences. In these moments, the burden of his former life began to lighten. The rigidity of schedules and corporate demands faded away, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the spontaneity of existence. Jonathan came to understand that every mile the train traveled carried him further not only from his past, but also closer to a future defined by heartfelt moments and honest connections. By the time the train resumed its journey toward the small town at the end of the line, Jonathan's heart was no longer heavy with loneliness. Instead, it pulsed with a quiet hope, a promise of rediscovery that lay ahead. Each turn of the tracks, every fleeting glimpse of a pastoral scene, reaffirmed his decision to embark on this voyage without a fixed destination. He had stepped away from a life of artificial success and was slowly embracing the gentle, unpredictable rhythm of true living. As twilight deepened outside his window, Jonathan smiled softly to himself. With the cool night air whispering promises of transformation, he looked forward to the new chapter awaiting him. A chapter where the journey itself became a story of healing, connection, and the hope of love yet to be discovered. The train slowly eased into a station that looked like a page from a storybook. When Jonathan stepped off the train, the crisp air and gentle lighting welcomed him with an authenticity he'd nearly forgotten. The station, modest and inviting, had wooden benches, a hand-painted sign bearing the town's name, and a quiet atmosphere that made every sound, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, and soft greetings, feel meaningful. As he walked out onto the platform, his senses absorbed the details. The smell of fresh earth mingled with hints of baked bread, drifting from a nearby cafe. The simplicity of the scene struck him like a cool splash of water after a long, suffocating day in the city. Here, every small detail beckoned him to explore: a welcome smile from a local vendor, the rhythmic steps of a town caretaker sweeping the platform, and the gentle murmur of conversations among residents waiting for their own journeys. While standing by the station's entrance, Jonathan's attention was caught by a figure who seemed to embody the spirit of the town. A woman, perhaps in her early 30s, was arranging fresh flowers on a little stand by the entrance. Her hair, loosely tied back, shimmered under the fading sunlight, and her eyes sparkled with an unspoken kindness. As she noticed him watching, her smile widened gently, as if inviting him into this world of warmth. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The simplicity and sincerity in her gaze made Jonathan feel as if he'd been seen for the first time in years. Curious and drawn by this genuine warmth, Jonathan approached. "Hello," he said with a soft voice that didn't betray the inner storm of his former life. The woman looked up and replied, "Hi there. You must be new. I'm Clara." Her tone was light and welcoming, setting his pulse to a rhythm that was both unfamiliar and deeply comforting. Clara's presence was unlike anyone he'd encountered in his high-powered world. Her attire was simple, a well-fitted blouse and comfortable jeans that spoke of practicality and genuine care for the little things in life. Over the next few moments, they exchanged pleasantries. Jonathan learned that Clara managed a small flower shop in town, a place that was as much a gathering point for locals as it was a business. With every word, Jonathan felt layers of his old self, cynicism, the weight of expectations, and guarded isolation, beginning to melt away. The station's small waiting area bustled gently with life as other travelers and locals mingled. While some caught up on hometown news and others planned their day, the casual simplicity of the conversations washed over him like a soothing balm. Clara, noticing his quiet wonder, offered a few suggestions about the town. "You should try the local bakery," she said, her voice filled with pride. "It's the best in town, and there's nothing like the smell of fresh bread in the morning." Her small recommendations, imbued with heartfelt enthusiasm, made Jonathan's heart lighten further. Hand in hand with the town's charm, Jonathan walked out of the station with Clara, who had graciously decided to offer a quick tour. As they strolled through narrow, winding streets, every corner of the small town revealed its quiet magic. They passed by a centuries-old church with stained glass windows that glowed in the early evening light, a community mural vibrant with local art and history, and modest homes adorned with fresh, blooming gardens. The conversation flowed easily. Clara shared stories of the town's history and the role each establishment played in forging a sense of community. In turn, Jonathan spoke of the stark contrast between his past life and the gentle rhythms he was beginning to embrace. There was no pretense in their dialogue, only raw honesty and a shared curiosity about life beyond the surface. In this moment, Jonathan felt that the gap between his former world and the new life beckoning him was bridged by genuine human connection. He realized that the beauty of the small town lay not just in its picturesque streets or friendly faces, but in its ability to make people slow down and savor life's quiet wonders. Every step he took with Clara felt like an invitation to rediscover parts of himself that had been buried under years of relentless ambition. By the time they reached the center of the town, a small square dotted with cozy cafes, a rustic fountain, and benches that welcomed passersby to sit and simply be, Jonathan sensed that his journey was only beginning. The square was alive with community spirit. A street musician tuning his guitar, children chasing each other around a blooming garden, and elders sharing memories on park benches. Here, there was an undeniable pulse of life, one that thrived on simplicity and heartfelt interactions. Standing there, amidst the soft glow of twilight and the sound of laughter mixing with nature's chorus, Jonathan felt a stirring hope. He wondered if, in this quaint town, he could rediscover the meaning of connection and perhaps find a new way of living. A life where success wasn't measured by business deals, but by moments of shared joy and sincere affection. As night fell softly over the small town, Jonathan bid farewell to Clara, with a promise to return and explore more of this unexpected world. That night, as he found a humble guest house to rest in, his mind replayed the images and voices of the day. In the quiet moments before sleep, he marveled at how fate, in the form of a wrong train ride, had brought him to a place where everything was possible, and where every heartbeat held the promise of something beautifully new. Jonathan woke early the next morning with a sense of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. The guest house was modest but comfortable, a cozy room decorated with local touches like handcrafted woodwork and vintage photographs of the town. Outside his window, the sunrise painted soft hues across the sky and gently illuminated the winding streets below. For the first time in a long time, he was ready to embrace a day without a rigid schedule, a day dedicated to discovery and simple pleasures. Stepping out, he found the town already alive with activity. Neighbors exchanged cheerful greetings in the early hours while shopkeepers unlocked their doors. The aroma of freshly baked bread from the local bakery mingled with the invigorating scent of dew on the grass. Jonathan recalled Clara's recommendation from the previous day and decided to start his exploration at the beloved bakery. The small building, adorned with a handwritten sign and colorful bunting, was bustling with regulars who greeted him with warm smiles and friendly nods. Inside, a kind-faced baker welcomed him. "First time here?" the baker asked. Jonathan nodded, and the baker replied, "Then you must try our cinnamon rolls. They're a taste of home." As he savored the sweet, spiced pastry, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar lightness in his heart, a deep, reassuring comfort in the simplest of moments. With his first taste of the town's warmth, Jonathan spent the morning wandering the streets. He visited the local market, where fresh produce and handmade crafts were displayed on wooden stalls. As he passed through the stalls, he exchanged small talk with the vendors, absorbing their stories about the town's long traditions and the care with which every item was made. Each conversation was a thread in the tapestry of this close-knit community. The town's heartbeat was most evident during the bustling community center's morning activities. Jonathan was invited, somewhat shyly, to join a group art class held in a sunlit room on the second floor of the center. Though he had never painted in his life, he accepted the invitation. With a brush in his hand and a palette of vibrant colors before him, he was amazed at how liberating it felt to create something without any set expectations. In that room, with everyone laughing and sharing their own imperfect strokes, Jonathan discovered that creativity could be a bridge to understanding oneself and others. Later that afternoon, Jonathan found himself drawn to a community garden located at the edge of town. The garden was an oasis of vibrant flowers and carefully tended vegetable patches, lovingly nurtured by a group of local volunteers. He rolled up his sleeves and began to help with planting new seeds, feeling an unexpected satisfaction in getting his hands dirty. The gentle guidance of an elderly gardener named Mr. Harper, whose eyes sparkled with decades of wisdom, reinforced the idea that every seed, no matter how small, could lead to beautiful growth if given time and care. Jonathan began to wonder if he too could cultivate new parts of himself, slowly and with patience. Throughout the day, Jonathan's interactions with the townspeople grew increasingly meaningful. At a lively afternoon tea hosted in the community hall, he listened intently to the tales of local heritage and the history of the town. He learned about how generations had worked together to overcome hardships and celebrated each victory with a communal feast. The room filled with laughter and music, and for a while, Jonathan forgot the rigid edges of his former life. In its place arose a warm sense of belonging, a belonging that was built on shared experiences rather than business transactions. As twilight approached, Clara reappeared, her presence as gentle and comforting as before. She invited him to join a small local festival that was held on weekends to celebrate the town's founding. Reluctantly at first, Jonathan agreed, and soon he found himself amidst a colorful crowd gathered in the town square. Lanterns hung from trees, soft music filled the air, and people danced with a joyful abandon that seemed to erase years of solitude. During the festival, Jonathan and Clara strolled along the crowded square. They sampled local treats, listened to folk tales, and danced under the cool night sky. Clara's laughter was contagious, and Jonathan felt his heart opening more with each shared smile and whispered secret. The simplicity of the moment, without corporate pressures or complicated decisions, was intoxicating. The night shimmered with a promise that change was possible if one was brave enough to embrace vulnerability and the unknown. By the end of the evening, Jonathan realized that he had not only experienced a day in the town, he had been woven into the fabric of its community. There was no longer a clear line separating him from the people around him. Instead, he had become a part of their everyday rhythm, participating in acts of kindness, sharing stories, and creating new memories together. Each conversation, each shared laugh, and every small act of connection fortified his resolve to stay open to this new way of life. That night, as he sat by the window of his guest house and watched the stars emerge one by one, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar but welcome emotion, contentment. For the first time, the quiet simplicity of community life filled the void that had haunted him for so long. The journey that began with a wrong train ride was unfolding into something extraordinary, a chance to rediscover joy, build deep connections, and ultimately, maybe even find love in its most sincere form. In the tender glow of the night, Jonathan fell asleep with a calm heart, eager to see what new wonder the next day in this simple, enchanting town might bring. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan began to feel more at home in the small town. He had bonded with the locals, learned the language of shared smiles and warm gestures, and even found himself laughing with an ease that had long been absent from his life. Yet, with every step toward his new life, the pull of his old world grew louder, a dissonant reminder of responsibilities and a past he could no longer simply set aside. One crisp morning, as Jonathan watered the plants in the community garden alongside Mr. Harper, his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. The screen lit up with messages and urgent emails from his company, a reminder of deals in motion, looming deadlines, and a critical board meeting scheduled for that very afternoon. The abrupt intrusion of corporate obligations shattered the calm of the garden. Mr. Harper paused, his hands still wet, as he looked at Jonathan with a mix of concern and understanding. Later that day, while trying to balance the tranquility he had found here with the demanding calls from his office, Jonathan received a call from his longtime assistant. The voice on the other end was both apologetic and insistent, explaining that his sudden disappearance was causing ripples in the upper echelons of the business. "Jonathan, you need to come back," his assistant pleaded. "People are worried, and the board is questioning your decisions." Inside, Jonathan felt a tight knot forming in his chest. The life he had built in the city, a life filled with status, power, and predictability, cast long shadows over the path he was beginning to tread here. As he stood in his quiet guest house, staring at the flickering light of his phone, his thoughts raced. The small town had given him something priceless, a sense of belonging and the promise of a simpler, more authentic life. But his identity as a CEO was deeply ingrained, with expectations and responsibilities that would not simply vanish because of a wrong train ride. That evening, at the town's community hall, a town meeting was held to discuss a local matter that required collective effort, a proposal to restore an old park that once served as the heart of the town. As Jonathan listened and even contributed ideas, he felt that same deep, satisfying connection that had changed him over the past weeks. Yet, as the meeting ended and applause filled the room, a nagging worry tugged at him. Would he be able to leave this new life behind if he allowed the pressure from his old world to resume its hold? Later that night, Clara found him sitting alone on a bench in the town square. The gentle glow of street lamps illuminated his troubled face as he stared into the distance. Her presence, as always, was a quiet comfort. "Jonathan, you've been distant all evening," she said softly, taking a seat beside him. "What's troubling you?" He sighed deeply and finally spoke the words he had been avoiding. "I'm caught between two worlds, Clara. My past, with all its demands and responsibilities, is calling me back. And I'm afraid that if I go back, I might lose everything I've started here, the feeling of being part of something real." Clara reached out and gently placed her hand over his. "Sometimes, change comes with difficult choices," she said. "But you must ask yourself what truly matters to you. Is it the endless pressures of a career that left you empty, or is it the life we're beginning to build together? A life full of warmth, simple joys, and genuine connections." Her words hung in the air, mingling with the soft hum of night. Jonathan thought about the ease in Clara's eyes and the heartfelt laughter of the community gatherings. In his heart, he remembered the moments of unexpected kindness and the feeling of being truly seen. Yet, the calls from his previous life were not so easily dismissed. They were voices of familiarity, a world that had defined him for so long. For several long minutes, they sat in silence, letting the weight of the conversation settle. Finally, with a renewed clarity, Jonathan spoke. "I need to handle this, Clara. I have obligations that I've left behind, but I also cannot ignore what I feel here. I'm torn, and I fear that any decision I make might shatter what I've begun here." Clara squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with understanding and a subtle determination. "Jonathan, facing conflict is part of growing into a new life. Sometimes, You must confront the parts of your past to fully embrace the future. I believe that if you listen to your heart, you'll find a way to merge both worlds without losing what makes you who you are. That night, in the quiet of his guest house, Jonathan wrestled with the demands of his former life and the gentle pull of the small town. He reviewed every message, every call he had received, and in each, he could hear the echo of a life he once knew, a life built on achievements but marred by loneliness. At the same time, he replayed the laughter at the community festival, the simplicity of conversations with Clara, and the peaceful rhythm of life in this town. It was a moment of raw, internal confrontation. He realized that while his past had shaped him, it did not have to define his future. Yet, the decision was not easy. The conflict within him grew sharper. The pull of corporate duty versus the promise of a quieter, more meaningful existence was almost unbearable. In the early hours of the morning, Jonathan reached a tentative conclusion. He resolved to face his responsibilities head-on, not to abandon them entirely, but to redefine his role in them. He would communicate with his team, explain his need for a different balance in life, and seek a way to blend the best parts of both worlds. It was a risky path, one that might lead to resistance from those who had come to rely on his decisive, uncompromising style. But the alternative, returning wholly to a life he no longer desired, was far more heartbreaking. The next day, with a firm resolve and a heart that still ached with uncertainty, Jonathan prepared to confront his old life. His decision marked a turning point. The conflict was not a sign of weakness, he realized, but rather a necessary step toward creating a future that truly resonated with his soul. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, Jonathan knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges. Yet, the memory of Clara's supportive smile and the warmth of the community gave him strength. He was ready to bridge the gap between two worlds, a daring but hopeful step toward a future where success was measured not by power alone, but by the quiet triumph of living authentically and lovingly. The confrontation with his past was imminent, and as Jonathan prepared for it, he promised himself that no matter the outcome, he would not lose sight of the life he had discovered in this small town, a life where every shared moment was worth fighting for. The dawn broke over the small town with a brightness that felt like a promise. Jonathan awoke with a heart that was still heavy from the previous night's internal battle, but also alight with the conviction that a new chapter was beginning. He knew that by facing his past and embracing the changes he had long craved, he was choosing a future filled with hope and authentic connection. That morning, Jonathan set out for a meeting with his corporate team via a video conference arranged from his temporary room at the guest house. The screen flickered on, displaying concerned faces that had been a constant reminder of the old world he once ruled. With a calm that surprised even himself, he began to explain his new vision. He spoke about rethinking priorities, about how the long hours in sterile boardrooms had left him with a yearning for genuine human interaction. His words, simple yet sincere, filled the virtual space with an emotion that resonated deeply with everyone on the call. There were moments of resistance and skepticism among his colleagues. Some doubted that such drastic changes could work in the fast-paced world of business. But Jonathan, inspired by the profound impact of the small town's warmth, promised to continue driving the business forward. Only this time, with a new focus on balance and well-being. He pledged that success would no longer be measured purely by profit margins or market share, but also by the strength of community and the happiness of those who helped shape it. After the meeting, a sense of calm determination settled over him. Jonathan felt as if a great weight had been lifted. The office demands would always be there, but he had finally found a way to honor both parts of his life. As he logged off, he remembered Clara's reassuring words and the soft smiles exchanged during the community gatherings. They had given him the courage to stand up and articulate a vision that merged his responsibilities with his newfound values. Later that day, Jonathan took a long walk through the town. The familiar cobbled streets, warm greetings from the locals, and the gentle murmur of the market all reminded him that this place had become more than a refuge. It was a partner in his transformation. Every step felt like a joyful defiance against the old ways of measuring success. At the town's community center, preparations were underway for an upcoming celebration marking the anniversary of the town's founding. Jonathan found himself volunteering to help set up decorations and arrange small stands for fresh produce and handmade crafts. His hands, once accustomed only to the cold precision of keyboards and glossy reports, now felt delightfully warm as they helped tie ribbons and hang fairy lights from the rafters. During a break from the busy tasks, he saw Clara waiting near a table laden with fruit. Her eyes met his, sparking a quiet conversation that soon turned into a shared laugh. In that moment, all the conflicting parts of his life, the relentless demands of the corporate world, the freedom of small-town simplicity, and his long-suppressed longing for warmth, seemed to converge. He realized that he didn't have to choose one over the other. Instead, he could integrate the structure of his past with the spontaneous beauty of his present. The turning point for Jonathan came when, during the town celebration later that evening, he was invited to speak. Under the soft glow of lantern light and the gentle hum of the crowd's anticipation, he stepped forward. His voice, resonant with the sincerity of his journey, told a story of mistakes, of unexpected detours, and of finding love in the most unlikely of places. He spoke of the loneliness of boardrooms, the risk of vulnerability, and ultimately, the courage it took to follow the call of one's heart. As he finished, there was a moment of silence, a breath held collectively by every listener, followed by a burst of applause that reverberated like a warm embrace. In that applause, Jonathan heard not just approval, but the promise of a shared future built on trust and mutual support. He saw in the faces around him the spark of a community that thrived on accepting the unpredictable nature of life, a community that believed in second chances. After the celebration, under a starlit sky, Jonathan and Clara walked together along a quiet path beside a gently flowing stream. The water reflected the shimmering stars above, much like how his heart now reflected hope and determination. In a hushed conversation, Clara whispered, "You embrace the unexpected tonight, and look at the beauty it has brought. Remember, every step forward is a step toward a life that truly matters." Jonathan squeezed her hand in response. He finally understood that the conflict he had once feared was simply the precursor to growth. In embracing the unexpected, he was no longer trapped between two worlds. Instead, he had crafted a new existence, a vibrant blend of purpose, balance, and love. The journey ahead would not be without challenges, but he now had the strength to face them. Standing under the vast, open sky, Jonathan felt that every decision he had ever made, every wrong turn that led him to this small town, was a necessary chapter in his life story. He had learned that the beauty of life lies in its unpredictability, in the courage to change, and in the willingness to open one's heart to the messy, brilliant reality of love. And with Clara by his side, he was ready to walk this new path, where every day, whether filled with corporate challenges or small-town wonders, was a step toward rediscovering what it truly means to live. Under a sky brushed with the subtle hues of dawn, Jonathan stood at the edge of the small town's main square, now a symbol of the life he had longed for and finally embraced. His transformation was no longer a distant memory of boardroom battles or the silent echo of loneliness. It was a vivid reality, woven from the threads of community warmth, personal reinvention, and the unexpected joy of discovering true love. In the months that followed, Jonathan learned that embracing change meant accepting imperfections and trusting that life's winding roads could lead to our most cherished destinations. Every conversation, every tender moment with Clara, and every shared laugh with newfound friends had reshaped his understanding of success. It wasn't the fleeting victories of corporate power. It was the enduring richness of a life lived in genuine connection. The once solitary CEO had come to realize that the very act of choosing the unpredictable, the wrong train ride, a step into a small town, a leap of faith into vulnerability, had opened a portal to a renewed existence. Here, amid the simplicity of everyday interactions and the gentle support of a community that celebrated every small joy, Jonathan found the freedom to love, heal, and redefine what it meant to be truly successful. As he gazed at the rising sun, he knew that his journey was far from over. Every new day promised further adventures, further lessons, and more shared stories of hope and transformation. And now, he was ready to carry that spirit forward, inviting others to rediscover that sometimes the unplanned detours are the most life-changing parts of our story. If you enjoyed Jonathan's journey of self-discovery and the transformative power of unexpected change, don't stop here. Join us on our YouTube Daily Stories channel, where every day brings a new, inspiring tale of real people, genuine emotions, and life lessons waiting to be discovered. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and become part of our growing community of storytellers who believe that every detour can lead to a beautiful, unexpected beginning. Your journey to a richer, more meaningful life starts with a single story. Let us inspire you daily. Subscribe now and never miss a story that reminds you how extraordinary life can be when you embrace the unexpected.